In the corner of a room, near a small paned window, a man leans over a globe of the heavens. In front of him are a rug, some books and scientific instruments. In the background, a painting, a cupboard, and more books. The Astronomer is a very small canvas, 45 centimeters by 50 centimeters. It is similar to another, slightly larger painting, the Geographer, now in the Museum of Frankfurt. The figure is the same. The Geographer leans over a map, compass in hand. The two pictures remain together for a long time. Their similarity indicates one characteristic of Vermeer's work. Only 34 paintings are known, but in them one can find variations on enigmatic interior scenes. Each canvas has a link with the others. To understand the Astronomer, we must examine it in the light of the rest.
3 early works. The Procurus. Vermeer was 24 years old, influenced by Rembrandt. Diana at her toilet. Christ in the house of Martha and Mary.
Then, Officer and Laughing Girl. A girl asleep. Lady reading at a window.
The Kitchen Maid. Young woman with a water jug.
Girl drinking with a gentleman. A couple with a wine glass.
Young lady with a pearl necklace. A woman weighing gold. Woman in blue reading a letter.
The concert. The music lesson. A girl interrupted at music.
Head of a young woman. The girl with a red hat.
Its attribution to Vermeer is contested.
Head of a young girl.
The lace maker. Lady with a guitar. Lady with a lute.
Lady writing a letter. Lady receiving a letter from her maid. The love letter. Lady writing a letter with her maid.
Young woman sitting at a virginal. Young woman standing at a virginal.
2 landscapes, a street in Delft and a view of Delft.
And 2 allegories. Allegory of the New Testament, allegory of painting.
This artist without a face was thought to have painted himself in the Procurus, following Rembrandt's style of self-portraiture, or elsewhere as a gentleman, music teacher, geographer, or astronomer, just as he may have portrayed his wife or daughters, all tempting hypotheses, but unverifiable. Hints gleaned from the town archives in Delft. He was born there, raised on one side of the market square, then moved to the other after his marriage to Catalina Bolens. She was Catholic, he was Protestant. He may have converted. She bore him 11 children. Vermeer's pictures were apparently set in only 5 different rooms, inspired by those in his own home, if not entirely imagined. The most often depicted had large black and white square floor tiles, the pattern of which the artist seems to have arranged or inverted at whim. A smaller room with a checkered marble floor and an emblazoned window, a parlour with large double windows and walls trimmed with Delftware tiles, a room with more rustic windows and a more ascetic decor. And finally, a small room with double windows as seen in the Geographer and the Astronomer. Most of the interior scenes are set in a corner. The windows and light source to the left, in the background a wall on a plane parallel to the pictures. The floor and part of the ceiling are sometimes visible, but never the exterior. The proportions of these interiors and the artist's perspectives are so precise that one writer was able to draw up plans and determine that Vermeer worked sitting rather close to his subject, his eye about 1 meter 10 from the floor. The same author also concluded that the painter must have been between 1 meter 65 and 1 meter 70. With the clues yielded by the Astronomer alone, it was possible to reconstruct the furnishings exactly and check the reliability of the light, the shadows, and the proportions. To shift from the setting for the astronomer to that of the geographer, a simple change of camera angle and lighting is enough. The same objects can be found in both pictures: the jug, the chair with lion heads, the viola da gamba. Or the same adornments: the yellow ermine-trimmed coat, the pearl. There are often maps on the walls, all genuine maps sold at the time, of which the Dutch were fond for decorating their homes. Some can still be found in libraries throughout Europe and in North America. Another common element, a painting within the painting. Some pictures recur frequently. Vermeer owned a picture by Van Baburen, the Procurus, which he showed in 2 of his paintings, but each time in different dimensions. It is currently at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. Another picture has been identified as Moses saved from the water, possibly the work of Peter Lely. It appears in the Astronomer, but as a smaller painting. In the Geographer, a navigation chart replaces the Moses picture. In the Astronomer, all the objects play a precise role. On a window pane, the eye detects a stained glass coat of arms typical of Delft houses. The deep square cupboard could belong to a cartographer as well as a painter. A compass, a common instrument used either to measure distances on a map or draw circles. An astrolabe, originally a Moorish instrument used to compute the movement of stars and planets. A globe of the heavens, no imaginary object. A rare specimen can be found at the Naval Museum in Amsterdam. It shows the constellations and signs of the zodiac and their forms inherited from antiquity. The Big Bear, Scorpio, and Cancer. This globe was signed by Geodicus Ondius, famous cartographer of the period, along with Mercator, and it was produced in 1600 at the same time as the Earth's globe, the one Vermeer painted in the Geographer and in Allegory of the New Testament. It is now housed at the Museum of Nuremberg. A dial, probably some sort of astronomic calendar. A book, on the left page a circular shape. On the right page, a few lines of text. With these clues alone, the book was traced to the Leiden Library. It is a treatise of astronomy by Andrian Metius. The edition Vermeer painted was published in 1621. It is slightly different from the 1614 first edition. Finally, the rug. It often occupies a large portion of Vermeer's painting surface. It allowed the painter to arrange folds to produce dark hollows and crests of light. In contrast to the tidy rooms and graceful figures, the heavy, chaotic, almost threatening mass of rug shifts the picture's balance. Vermeer probably didn't have his own studio. He worked by daylight in household rooms. But he combined to his advantage all the lighting possibilities Dutch houses of the period had to offer. Upper or lower windows with transparent or tinted panes, inside or outdoor shutters, stained glass and curtains enabled him to regulate the flow of sunlight. Each room thus became a sort of light trap. The painter sat rather close to the left wall, and the scene is often lit by windows behind him. These windows are reflected in the jug. Drapes allow him to modulate their light. This window lighting device is incorporated in the painting as one of many decorative elements. The same double window is used in both the Astronomer and the Geographer. the shutter and curtain drawn over one side, both sides bared to let light flood in, the curtain in the foreground. In the Astronomer, the window as sole light source imposes its shape on the image as a whole. It indicates a vertical echoed by the cupboard and the picture frame, and a horizontal propagated by the cupboard and its moulding. The window and the picture, plainly outlined by their frames, suggest attention outwards. The light source produces shadows slightly out of kilter with the diagonal. The vanishing points of the perspectives meet at the center of the canvas. In the 17th century, painters who wished to adhere to perspective often used the camera obscura, an ancestor of the modern camera. The instrument grew increasingly complex. The camera obscura was a box fitted in the front with one or several lenses and a plate of frosted glass in the back. An object could be roughly focused by using a bellows-like device. The resulting image was backwards and upside down, but a mirror projected it upwards. It was then right side up, but remained reversed. The artist needed simply to trace the features of an image to arrange the shapes, contours, and perspective. Might the strangeness of Vermeer's pictures be born out of this primitive photographic vision? The first clue, a division of focal planes. Here the size of the man is a lot larger than the young girl's. A camera lens with a short focal length can achieve the same effect when the subject is near. The objects in Vermeer's foregrounds are emphasized. Second clue, the picture's blurriness. Photography and film have since made us familiar with the notion of depth of field. If the fruit in the foreground are brought into focus, the glasses in the back wall become blurred. If we focus on the middle ground, the foreground itself then clouds. Finally, if the back wall is in focus, the fore and middle ground are blurred. In The Milkmaid, the foreground is slightly blurred, whereas even the smallest nail hole can be made out on the back wall. It has hence been said that Vermeer's painting was blurry, and if we look at canvases by his contemporaries, there is an obvious search for perfect realism, precise outlines, and an often codified system of lighting. Vermeer's purpose, on the contrary, is to render the luminous impression of a given moment. Modeling is secondary. Third clue, the rigorous perspective. Central perspective is characteristic of photographic images. Often when perspective produced foreshortening, painters would cheat. Vermeer, on the contrary, respects this optical effect on the milkmaid's arm. The painter's hand, the geographer's hand, or even the flood of light that erases the bridge of the nose of the young girl with a veil, or the young girl with pearls. Fourth clue, dabbing or pointillé. When the focus of a camera lens is adjusted, the shiny reflections diffuse into round specks of light or circles of confusion. And indeed, in many of Vermeer's pictures, the blurred objects are dabbed with these luminous touches. Fifth clue, the painting's format. A naked round lens projects a round or slightly oval image on frosted glass. A square or slight rectangle are the perfect shapes to capture this image and eliminate its blurred edges, which explains the shape of the camera obscura. It has been observed that Vermeer's canvases are relatively consistent in their proportions, and that his rectangles are very nearly squares. View of Delft is an even more flagrant example of this nearly photographic vision. The town is seen from the south, the Schiedam and Rotterdam gates in the centre. The clock on the first gate reads 10 minutes after 7. The low-hanging sun lights the roofs from the east. It is morning. The rich light and detail are all the more astonishing since artists of that period never painted out of doors. The exact place from which Vermeer painted can be located from the riverbank. The landscape is seen from a rather high point, yet the riverbank is level. Vermeer may have set up on the first floor of one of the houses there and used a more sophisticated camera obscura, perhaps similar to those astronomers used to observe effects of the sun. He would have then stretched the contours of his landscape and composed certain details. The central perspective, pointillism, a nearly square canvas, a division of focal planes, the blurred foreground and figures, all these elements are features of the astronomer as well. The camera obscura is merely an instrument. It may have influenced or aided Vermeer, but it doesn't explain everything. The astronomer is painted on a linen canvas over a dovetailed stretcher, probably held with wooden pegs later replaced by nails that have strained the threads slightly. Of a rather tight weave, it was most likely sized with a dark substance. In Allegory of Painting, the painter applied his colours directly on a grey ground after sketching with chalk or a brush contours that may have been previously traced from the frosted glass of the camera obscura. The blue of the rug, green and yellow ochre of the globe and the window, red ochre of the backgrounds, blue-violet of the chair and dark areas. Most of the colour wheel is represented. Vermeer used standard pigments, mineral yellow pigments, malachite green, cerise white, yellow ochre, red ochre, and cinnabar red. One of the artist's favourite hues was ultramarine, derived from lapis lazuli and used abundantly in each painting as a base for all shadows. Vermeer didn't use black. He obtained it by mixing brown and ultramarine blue. And he often prepared his greens by mixing blue with a pale organic yellow, probably issuing from a decoction of yellow flowers. This green hasn't aged well. The yellow organic pigment faded. The trees in Delft become blue, as have the laurels worn by the figure in Allegory of Painting. The astronomer's robe is of an indefinite colour, between blue and green, perhaps a result of the same process. The character of the astronomer was an appropriate choice. The rigour with which Vermeer studied light and substance was in the spirit of scholars such as Newton at the time. Until then, artists painted shadows in black or brown hues. Vermeer was one of the first to take their colours into account and work with gradations. In The Milkmaid, a tiny crack in the window lets in a ray of sunlight that the rest of the window filters in blue. This meticulous attention to light is even more striking in his treatment of reflections. The way garments reflect on a figure's skin, the figure's reflections in windows or mirrors. Reflections structure facial areas and features. Or show what lies beyond the pictorial space, as in the glass bulb in Allegory of the New Testament, where again open or closed windows are used as a lighting device. In The Astronomer, a glint hardly a quarter-inch wide reveals the rest of the room in a window. Here the reflection is reduced to a sort of atom of light using the pointillist technique. Perhaps inspired from circles of confusion caused by optical lenses, these beads of light abound in many canvases. Little splashes of lighter colour, dabbed on with a brush tip, capture light from all sides, intensifying their brightness. The rough shingles on a sunlit roof, water shimmering against the planks of a boat, the shiny texture of a loaf of bread, the creamy consistency of milk, the luster of fabrics, the sheen of blonde hair. Hence an object's texture is rendered by the capacity of the substance to produce these tiny grains of light. The astronomer deploys the full range of strokes: medium light strokes, broad applications of color, very fine brush strokes, and finally pointillés. The painting is signed and dated 1668. The calligraphy is similar to that in other paintings, but the names and dates may have been added after Vermeer's death, perhaps by an art dealer. The Astronomer, in fact, has an eventful history. It was registered along with the Geographer in several Dutch auctions. The two canvases came to France in 1785, but the royal treasury apparently could not finance the purchase, so they returned to Holland. The Astronomer was sold in Amsterdam in 1797, then again in 1800. It came to London in 1863, appeared in Leopold Double's inventory in Paris, then went to Alphonse de Rothschild, a major collector of the northern schools. When the Nazis started confiscating Jewish belongings throughout Europe in 1938, the Astronomer was seized with the entire Rothschild collection, intended for the museum Hitler planned to build in Linz. It was rescued from a salt mine after the war, along with thousands more works of art, and returned to its owner. Following an agreement between Baron Guy de Rothschild and the state, the Astronomer, the last Vermeer held in a private collection, joined the lacemaker at the Louvre in 1983. The first major study on Vermeer, signed by Tory Berger, was published in La Gazette des Beaux-Arts in 1866. Vermeer had been rediscovered, museums competed for his canvases, and the painter entered the ranks of history.
A small bit of yellow wall with a white wall. A small bit of yellow wall, and yet draped on a circular canapé. Just as abruptly he stopped thinking.
A globe on the table, a window that lights the room, a man leaning over. The scene seems clear. The Astronomer rose slightly from his chair to spin the globe of the heavens and check data from his book. Similarly, the Geographer, leaning over a map, suspended in motion, lifts his eyes in thought. Two complementary canvases, two popular scholarly occupations in a century when ambitious naval explorations rivaled the glory of the astronomer's discoveries. The subject of the scholar and his study was common at the time. Vermeer, moments suspended on the edge of a dream. In this peaceful world, the sometimes equivocal scenes cause uneasiness, gazes invoke the viewer. The obsessive, insistent presence of the letter is open to any interpretation. Indeed, the scenes Vermeer depicted appear to have had meanings that escape us today. A woman standing in the shadow holding a scale in hand. On the wall, a judgment day when souls are weighed. A ray of light reveals the woman is pregnant. Perhaps Vermeer was evoking the theological question of free will. Is the soul of the unborn child predetermined or not? As to the Astronomer, it has a well-known precursor, Rembrandt's Faust, receiving enlightenment. What enlightenment could have come to Vermeer's Astronomer? It has been suggested that the Moses referred to the prophet's warning against watching the sun, the planets, and the stars. But the book by Meticulous, at precisely the page shown in the picture, alludes to the patriarchs, the first astronomers. Moses himself, leader of the Exodus from Egypt, has often been associated with geography and travel. In the Astronomer, he occupies the same position as the navigation chart in the Geographer. The two canvases might signify man's spiritual path through life. Another possible interpretation: the Astronomer has often been called the philosopher or the astrologer. Moses rescued from the water sometimes symbolizes the birth of a child. In Vermeer's time, astronomy and astrology were still linked. A child is expected. To chart his horoscope, the astrologer consults the globe of the heavens, on which the sign of Libra appears most clearly. Lastly, the two canvases might constitute an allegory of the elements in classical symbolism. The Earth's colours and relief are suggested by the rug and the Geographer, water by his navigation chart, the globe of the heavens and the Astronomer represents air, Moses the aquatic world. The sunlight bathing both paintings would symbolize fire. The twisted figures and strange forms in the patterns of the rug seem to recall the bestiary of the celestial globe. Other readings are always possible, for though the Astronomer depicts a carefully enclosed space, each object is directed out of frame towards infinity. The window opens onto the exterior and light, the books onto knowledge, the picture within a picture onto another moment in the history of man, the instruments onto mathematics, the globe onto the stars, and the reflections onto yet another space, the painter and his vision.